As of writing this video, it's only March, but so far this year, the card that demands the highest premium on the secondary market is none other than Mega Gengar EX from Ascended Heroes. You probably predicted this one, but the market is so crazy right now that this list will surprise you. I recently published a video covering the most expensive Pokemon card from every year, but two things have happened since then. First, many of you asked for the trophy cards to be removed. This is like big championship cards. Hey, I get it, that was my bad. So this video will include only cards that can be pulled from a mainline booster pack. You asked, I delivered, maybe now you'll finally subscribe? Secondly, since I published that video, we've had record-breaking sales on a weekly basis, so a lot of that list has changed. Also, we're going backwards this time. Okay, so the 2025 entry is different than everything else on the list. This white Reshiram was submitted to Beckett and earned a black label, but then they decided to crack the slab. The card was sent into space for a few minutes, then began its descent. It then returned home and was resubmitted to Beckett. The big reveal at the end is that Dragon Shield sleeves were so good that the card was graded a pristine 10 black label a second time upon its arrival. The card was then auctioned for charity, the Toy Foundation to be specific, and sold for a final price of $57,500. It also got a custom Dragons in Space label. But other than that, we'd be looking at the Umbreon EX from Prismatic Evolutions, which recently broke a record at $8,000 for a PSA 10. By the way, all these prices are in USD. Next up, we have the Mew EX from Paldean Fates. Everyone calls this guy the Bubble Mew, and the illustration is by Uzgman, who only has 5 cards illustrated in the TCG, including this Solissus, which happens to also be in a bubble, so people started calling it Booger Mew, which is actually pretty funny. In a PSA 10, Bubble Mew can sell for over $2,500. Yes, Pokemon 151. So this set came out almost 3 years ago in 2023 and featured all 151 original Pokemon. Because Kadabra was shunned for so long, this was the first time ever that the entire original gang was available in a single expansion set. It did well, but didn't truly explode until right now. It's March 2026 and the entire set is blowing up and setting records daily. A CGC Pristine 10 copy just sold for $2,700. Lost Origin had this wicked Giratina V by Shinji Kanda, who's a super popular artist right now for their unique style you can also see in this Magikarp, Magneton, Oricorio, and Seismitoad. However, while researching this Giratina V, I stumbled on this sale, a Giratina V Star, so a different card and in Japanese, but sold for over $5,000 as a Beckett Black label. I hope we see more of these because I love BBLs. And so do Umbreon VMAX fans. So if for some reason you don't already know, this card was nicknamed Moonbreon, I guess because of the moon. It's probably the biggest card in the modern age of Pokemon and has prices to reflect that. Despite it not being that rare relative to some cards in the same price bracket, and with over 20,000 PSA 10 copies, it still demands quite the premium regardless of its condition. A Beckett Black label recently sold for $14,400, beating out the previous record sale of $12,000. So 2020 was this year where Pokemon saw a steady incline in popularity. Everyone was stuck at home discovering their old collections, but Sword and Shield was not, well, it didn't have a very good value proposition. The cards sucked. That's why things didn't start to heat up until Champion's Path. Now, this set also kind of sucked, but it did have a shiny Charizard V, which is apparently all you need to light an entire industry on fire. It's a nice card, rare, and worth, okay, wow, $5,000 when graded in a Beckett Black label. I have a question. Would you share your search history with me? No? Well, why not? You already share it with a bunch of strangers. That's right, your internet service provider can see every website you visit. And if you have a landlord who has access to the router you use, they can see this information too. For only a few dollars a month, you can solve this by signing up with ExpressVPN. A VPN is a private tunnel between your device and the internet, keeping your browsing history private and your data secure. Do you guys remember that Pokemon card prices explained video I made a few months ago? Okay, I actually uploaded that over public Wi-Fi from a hotel in Mexico. You bet your butt that I used a VPN. And you should too if you are ever on public Wi-Fi. So while you're paying only a few bucks a month to secure your data, you also unlock a whole bunch of content around the world. That's because ExpressVPN lets you change your online location by choosing a VPN server in any of 105 different countries. I was able to get you guys an extra 4 months if you click the link in the description box below, scan the QR code on screen, or go to expressvpn.com/sncv. It is extremely easy to sign up and to use. You guys know I'm picky with sponsors, so please know that this is a service that I personally use and truly recommend. I made a whole video on Team Up. You can watch it if you want, but it's really all about this card, nicknamed the Lovebirds by the community. This card, an alternate art GX tag team, features Latios and Latias. The whole gimmick with the tag team is that 2 Pokemon could share one card, which is loved by collectors but hated by players. Either way, this illustration seems to bring both parties together. Everyone loves this card and it regularly sells for $10,000 in a PSA 10. However, a Beckett Black Label copy sold for 28 grand on alt back in 2025. However, if you are really in love with this card, you can get a discount by picking up the Japanese copy in a PSA 10 for between 5 and 6 grand. This comes from the set Tagbolt. I checked the population reports for fun and found that the English copy has less PSA 10s on the market than the Japanese copy, which I thought was interesting. GX Battle Boost is a Japanese set from 2017. On eBay right now, a sealed booster box sells for about 10 grand, and that's only 10 packs, by the way. The big hit from this set is Lily, a trainer card with a record sale of $44,000 for a PSA 10. The Japanese version of XY Evolutions is called Expansion Pack 20th Anniversary, or lots of people just call it CP6. It mostly looks the same as Evolutions with the original reprints, break cards, Mega EXs, but has some extra secret rares. One of these secret rares is Pikachu. A Beckett Black Label copy sold for $78,000, and this was on alt. The legendary Shine collection is a Japanese subset that released alongside the 18th Pokémon movie featuring Hoopa. In a PSA 10, the Palkia from the set sold for a spooky $66,666. Alright, I have a feeling you've seen this Dialga EX before. This is a super unique card and the only of its kind. It was released in a set called XY Phantom Forces back in 2014, and as you can see, it's silver. What's happening is that this card doesn't have a lot of ink on it, which is intentionally done to create this effect. Cards that have a large holofoil surface area, such as Ancient Mew or this Dialga, are scratched easily. This can even be baby micro scratches, even wiping dirt off can cause them. For this reason, it's really hard to get a PSA 10, but when it does, it can sell for nearly 20 grand. So Charizard from Plasma Storm is actually a pretty cool card. I know a lot of us have Charizard fatigue, but hear me out. This was during a time when secret rare cards had texture and a gold border, and the Pokemon was shiny. So we had these cards that were kind of incredible, but totally underappreciated and overlooked. In the modern TCG, gold cards, texture, and shiny Pokemon are all expected, and we get a dose in every set. But back then, this was reserved for only a couple of cards per set. This Charizard recently sold for $59,000 on Golden in a PSA 10. And this card also takes the 2012 spot with the Japanese release. This came in the Japanese set Plasma Gale and sold on eBay on a buy it now listing for 21,000 smackaroos. I've talked about Call of Legends in the past. It's an awkward set that didn't get printed much due to low demand and consisted of Heart Gold, Soul Silver reprints with new artwork. The secret rares are shiny legendary Pokemon and all demand a premium. Their Japanese counterparts were rare promos obtained through a lottery, which might help bump up the price of these English copies a little bit. In a PSA 10, they all do pretty well on the secondary market. A few to note are Kyogre selling for $27,600, Ho-Oh for $15,000, and Umbreon for $25,000. But they honestly don't come up for sale very often, so I'm not sure what their true value is. Gengar Prime in a PSA 10 sold for $14,400. Prime cards are fun because they kind of came and went and to this day remain under people's radars. Each Pokemon is illustrated close up with their face basically squished into the illustration window. The Pokédex information and illustrator were removed to make them look more simple and streamlined, and of course, we have the spiky frame around the art. So originally I had Gengar Level X from Platinum Arceus here. A PSA 10 sold on eBay for an accepted price of $30,000. But then on Fanatics I found a sale for a Charizard Level X from Supreme Victors for, wait for it, 100 grand. Man, I don't know what's happening to the hobby right now. This has to be some sort of tax evasion thing. Or maybe not. I don't know. But Fanatics says it's been confirmed and paid by the buyer. So congrats. So the Diamond and Pearl era of Pokemon was pretty boring. Not in a bad way, but they weren't milking millennials dry yet by stuffing it with Generation 1 nostalgia. So it was boring for me. But the final set of Diamond and Pearl was Stormfront, and that's exactly what they did. Arita drew new illustrations of Charmander, Charmeleon, and Charizard in their original poses. They're pretty awesome. A PSA 10 copy of the Charizard just sold for $45,600. And just like that, we're into Gold Star territory. So Umbreon and Espeon, let's address these guys. Both these cards are in the $20,000 plus range. Now, they can be pulled from a pack, Pop Series 5 to be precise, but they're promo packs for Pokemon Organized Play. That's what POP stands for, by the way. But before that specific sale, it was Jolteon Gold Star at $18,500 in a PSA 10, of course. Things get a little messy for this era of Pokemon. Gold Stars had a huge run up over the past few years, quickly becoming some of the most sought after cards, like, ever. When we see a big gold rush like this, prices become inflated. Buyers suffer from the fear of missing out and tend to spend more, while sellers, and especially people who are sitting on a large stock of Gold Star cards, are incentivized to drive that price higher. What I'm getting at is that this sale, 100 grand for a Gyarados Gold Star, is weird. I'm not saying it's fake. I believe someone has paid that much money for that card and I'm sure they love it, but I don't believe it's worth that to the average collector. If you bought a PSA 10 Gold Star Gyarados in 2022, you would have paid about 17 grand. So you can see how that lights a fire and attracts wealthy people to investing in Pokemon. Anyways, what I'm getting at is, yes, some of these Gold Star sales are absolutely bonkers. So when it comes to Gold Stars, there is one that reigns above the rest, from the ozone layer where it's said to reside. That's right, Cleffa. Just kidding, Rayquaza. Rayquaza Gold Star is a serious card, and I'm breaking the rules a little bit for this entry on the list. There have been a few sales over the past few years in the $40,000 range, but nothing within the past year. But if a PSA 10 sold today in 2026, I think we can all reasonably expect it to break six figures or get very close. There's also a CGC Pristine 10 out there, but has not sold publicly. I would expect this to break records if it ever did. And then yeah, it's no surprise that the Japanese copy of Rayquaza just sold for $22.5 thousand in a Beckett 9. This is a desirable card, but that's not the most expensive card from 2004. It's actually Japanese Torchic Gold Star, which can go for apparently 150 grand and was originally released in Rocket Gang. Crystal Charizard from Skyridge has always held this spot, but the Holo Gengar has seen some crazy sales recently. But of course, no one can compare it to the Umbreon from Skyridge. Except for Crystal Lugia, which recently sold for 100k? That's right, the most expensive pullable card from 2003 right now is Crystal Lugia in a PSA 10. There are lots of contenders for this spot in 2002, but at the end it was won by a Japanese copy of Crystal Charizard, which sold for 50 grand only recently on Fanatics. So this February, just about a month and a half ago at the time of writing this video, a first edition Shining Magikarp sold at auction for $132,000 on Fanatics. Shining Magikarp has always been a big card, but I was still surprised to see such a premium paid over other cards like Umbreon, Gyarados, the Japanese Shinings from 2001. It shocked me, to be frank. For the year 2000, as we dive into true vintage, a BBL Shining Gyarados sold for 90k. This is a population of 1, which means Beckett has only ever ordered 1 copy of this card as a perfect pristine 10. Alright, so this is it. The year Pokemon came to the West. Of course, there is only one card that will ever take this spot, and that's the highly coveted first edition Charizard. In the last video I made, this was hovering around $500,000. It was just like a month ago, by the way. But recently, a copy sold for just a hair under 1 million. Now, this was a very special, extra premium, one-of-a-kind copy because the PSA label had Logan Paul printed on it. So in my opinion, totally worth it. 1998 is kind of funny because it drops our average down. The most expensive pullable card from this year sold for only, yes, only 14 grand. And I'm even bending the rules a little bit. This is, of course, Uyama's Pikachu. And yes, I'm a little salty about this one because I almost bought a copy years ago when it was like 200 bucks, but for some reason I didn't. And now look what happened. Anyways, the reason I'm bending the rules is because this card didn't come from a pack. This is a vending series card. So back in 1998, there was a super unique Japanese exclusive set distributed through vending machines. It was split into 3 parts and came on these sheets that are the same size as a jumbo Pokemon card. Each sheet had 4 cards and it had to be peeled off. Just recently, the Japanese Dragonite from Fossil blew up and recent sales are placing it at 8 grand. I can't really say why this spike just occurred right now other than it's a really beautiful card. No rarity Charizard. So the first cards to ever come hot off the printers in Japan were missing the rarity symbols. In my last video and last year, a PSA 10 copy sold for $641,721. However, just recently, another PSA 10 copy, but with the case signed by Mitsuhiro Arita, sold for $1.23 million. Interestingly, I stumbled on an older sale of this card from 2022, and it sold for $324,000. That's quite the return on investment, isn't it? As a reminder, this list is always changing. Cards are always spiking or dropping in value. If you want to know why that happens, I have a video all about Pokemon card prices.